9 to 10 p.m., Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. The world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m., Monday night on Liffey Sounds.
Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome along to this week's edition of The World You Don't Know with myself, Mick O'Connell. As you've heard before in the past when I've had Robbie on, it makes for a better interview, you know, because there's questions that need to be asked of certain guests, and sometimes you don't remember to ask them if you don't have them written down, and that's not my style, writing stuff down. So, as I said, it's always good to have two heads is better than one. So, I will keep you informed anyway of developments in that respect. With getting Trevor on. Now, I did tell him earlier on Facebook that I'm on tonight at 9 o'clock if he fancy jumping in, and he's always welcome to come on if he does want to come on. But he didn't get back to me, so I'm assuming he probably doesn't. He could be busy. As I said, I think he might not notice at all. It was just me throwing out a sarcastic remark. Come on tonight, and if you're ready for it. But I don't think he's ready yet. But if he is good and well, I'll check on Skype now in a few minutes, and if he's on there, he might want to come on, who knows. Anyway, more news that I'm going to bring to you. I've had Billy Maguire on my show in the past. The last time I had him on was the week of January the 21st. It would have been a couple of days prior to that, which is Ireland's Independence Day, which is something that has been kept from the nation for a very, very long time, and for a very good reason, which I'll get into now in a moment. But anyway, yesterday, as I said, Ireland's Independence Day is January the 21st, and that's always celebrated by the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood. Now, for those of you who don't know who they are, if you think they're some sort of an ancient organisation that no longer exists, well, you couldn't be any further from the truth. They do exist. They held their 158th AGM yesterday in Hayes Hotel in Thurles, which was the birthplace of the GAA, Hayes Hotel. So, and it was the IRB who started the GAA. They got the GAA together. It comes from the IRB, as do many other organisations in this country. Anyway, Billy Maguire is the president of the IRB and the president of the Sovereign Republic of Ireland, believe it or not. I mean, everyone thinks Michael D. Higgins is the president. Well, he is, but he's the president of the Oireachtas, the 26 counties. He's not the president of the Sovereign Republic, i.e. the 32 county Sovereign Republic of Ireland, which is the only legitimate state in existence in this country today, and that's a fact. It's a documented, verifiable fact. I brought this information to you before, but I'll explain briefly how it's a fact for those of you who don't know. As I said, the IRB started the GAA in the 1800s from Hayes Hotel, which is where they held their AGM yesterday. I was down there, I was at the AGM, and it went down very well. Met some great people down there. But as I said, the IRB, a lot of organisations come out, and one of the big things that came from the IRB was the 1916 Rising, which, as I pointed out on this show before, was completely hijacked by the Fine Gael-led government this year. The 2016 celebration was totally hijacked. The IRB didn't get an invitation to anything from any organs of the state, and there's good reason for it, which I'm going to get into. As I said, the 1916 Rising was something that was instigated by the IRB. It was through funding that the IRB had obtained from their headquarters in Vaughan's Hotel that the Rising was made possible. I mean, there's tunnels leading from Moore Street all the way to Vaughan's Hotel that most Dubliners don't even know exist, but that they are there. Now, Billy's been down to those tunnels this year. I haven't had the pleasure of actually visiting those tunnels, and I hope to do so in the future. But as I said, those tunnels do exist. So without the IRB, the 1916 Rising would not have happened. So what's the significance of the IRB today in relation to the way this country is? Well, the significance is, as I said, they are the holders of the 1918 32 county election manifesto. In 1918, there was a 32 county general election held in this country after the 1916 Rising, and the IRB were given a mandate to form a government, to form the first Dáil, and they did so on the 21st of January 1919. Now, the will of the people was that there be a 32 county sovereign republic. Now, of course, that didn't gel too well with the British, with the colonial rulers who were operating in this country at that time. Of course it didn't gel well. I mean, we seen what happened in the aftermath of the 1916 Rising. All the leaders of that particular venture were all executed in Kilmainham Jail and elsewhere. Now, Why do I say that the 1918 Constitution is the only legitimate one in this state? Well, for the simple reason being, as I said, there was a 32 county general election in 1918 and they were given a mandate and the Constitution was therefore ratified by the people in 1918. Now, of course, King George V, who was on the throne at the time, the Queen's, believe he was her grandfather, Queen Elizabeth's grandfather, he was on the throne at the time and he wasn't having a part of this. You know, a sovereign independent republic, totally independent from the crown. Obviously, we couldn't have that, we've too much tied up in it. We've got 800 years tied up in this. So they weren't going to let go easily, and they never did. Now, most Irish people walking around today have a fake belief in their minds, which has been drummed into them through the education system, that we do live in a independent republic. We don't. Nothing could be further from the truth. What King George did for us was, he declared the 1919 assembly of the first All-Ireland in the Round Room in the Mansion House an illegal assembly, even though they had a manifesto, or a mandate, should I say, from the people, from all 32 counties on the island. So what they had was legitimate, what the Brits had was totally illegitimate. I mean, we know that. They should have been in this country in the first place, but they were nevertheless. But anyway, the IRB managed to secure a 32 county mandate, and they started up the first Dáil on the 21st of January. That's why it's our Independence Day, and that's been kept from people. What happened, you ask? Well, they instigated the Civil War. And there was carnage in the country. We all know this. I mean, we know this from our history books. Michael Collins then was sent to London to sign for the treaty. Now, what happened with the treaty? It was only for the 26 counties. Now, in order for that treaty to be carried, and carried lawfully, you would have to have ratification of that treaty from the 32 counties, not the 26. The 32 counties, as I said, had an election in 1918, which was a landslide victory for the IRB, to form a government in this country, which they did. The first Dáil, declared illegal then, or unlawful, whatever you want to call it, by the British. And then the British foisted upon us then, on the 5th of December 1922, the Oireachtas, which still stands to this day. Now, the Oireachtas, as I've pointed out on the show many, many times before, is a British construct. It's not an Irish construct, it's a British construct. Yes, it's called the Oireachtas, but that's just to fool the people into thinking that it's something Irish. It's like the royal family, for example. Their actual name is not Windsor. Most people in modern times believe the name to be Windsor. It's not. They just pick the name of a place as a surname. Their actual name is a German name, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. They're not even English, but most English people don't know that. And this is how these rulers do this. They disguise themselves as something that they're not. It's like in America, I remember there was a 12-year-old girl doing a study in the United States of all presidents in the United States, and it turns out that they're all related. They're all like 11, 12, 13 cousins, but they're all related to European royalty. So what does that tell you? You know, there's 7 billion people on this planet, and yet all these people who are in power are related to each other. Now, don't get me wrong, they might be 5th cousins, 10th cousins, twice removed. It doesn't matter. They're still blood. You know, and that's what these people who rule the world rely on, is pure bloodlines. And all these people are related to each other. They just have different names for very good reasons. So people like us don't make the connections. But as I said, there was a 12-year-old girl who'd done a genealogy study for a school project and discovered all this. Now, I knew a lot of this prior to that discovery coming out. I've read it in books many, many years ago. That American presidents, not all of them, JFK was one of the exceptions, so was Abraham Lincoln. He was another exception. But most presidents, including Obama, have some sort of connection to European royalty. And it makes sort of sense, because when you think about it, these empires that grew up from the Middle Ages onwards, or even from biblical times onwards, they were massive empires. Do you honestly believe that these empires were just going to crumble? They didn't. And it was the same with the British Empire running this country. People in this country were given the illusion that they left. They didn't. Yes, the soldiers might have left. They might have took down the crest from Dublin Castle. They might have taken down the name police from Garda stations and put Garda signs up and stuff like that. I get all that. But as I said, all they were doing was changing the clothing, but the wolf remains, and it's the same wolf. And it was great yesterday to be down in Hayes Hotel listening to Billy Maguire recant all this history about what actually went on in this country. And stuff like that you're not getting told in the mainstream media, and you will never get told on the mainstream media. But basically what went down in this country was, as I said, on December the 5th, 1922, we had the Oireachtas foisted upon us, and that still stands to this day. It's a British construct. It's the courts as well. I mean, have you ever wondered why, when you go to an Irish court, like the High Courts and the Supreme Court, they wear these wigs the same way they do in Crown Courts in England? It's because they are Crown Courts. They might be called Irish courts over here, but as I said, it's the wolf changing its clothing. It's no different. So this country effectively is still under British rule. They've never gone away. And I've said this to politicians when they're knocking around during the election times. I've asked them, when is Ireland's Independence Day? And they don't know. You know, I find that shameful that we as Irish people have absolutely no problem knowing when America's Independence Day is, 4th of July. Everybody knows this. I mean, even Colin Meaney was on, I think it was Miriam O'Callaghan's show one night, and he was talking about Independence Day. And he was saying he was walking through Dublin Airport, and he's seen all these American flags and everybody celebrating the 4th of July. And he was saying, well, why don't we celebrate our Independence Day? Even when is it? And he didn't know. And I don't think he realised at the time the significance of what he was actually saying. But if he's listening, which I doubt he is, but it's the 21st of January. It's Ireland's official, the only Independence Day that we've got. It was the first day that Ireland declared its independence and started its first all, January 21st, 1919. 12 noon, round room in the Mansion House. So, fast forward into today, we still have the Oireachtas. I mean, even Billy was explaining yesterday that the tricolour belongs to the IRB, and that's been hijacked by this Oireachtas, this government, which is a de facto government, and this is admitted. It's a de facto government, which means it's not a de jure government, it's de facto. It's just, it's there. You know, this is what you have, this is all you're getting, make do with it, make the best of it. But who do they answer to? They don't answer to the Irish people. Think about it. How could they answer to the Irish people? Look at the state of this country today. Who are they representing? They're not representing the ordinary man and woman on the street. Definitely not representing them. So who are they representing? They're representing the Crown. That's who they represent. Of course, you don't get taught any of this in school. Now, as I said, a lot of people have the misconception that the IRB was this, I mean, the government would like you to think this, that the IRB is this ancient organisation that no longer exists. Well, they do. And they still hold this mandate to this day. They've never given that mandate up. And it's with the hope that one day enough people in this country will wake up and realise that we're all sovereigns in this country. That's the one thing the IRB and the 1918 Constitution grants, or guarantees, not even grants, because you can't grant something you've already got. But it's sovereignty, and they will protect it. Now, don't get me wrong, the government of today certainly have absolutely no respect for our sovereignty. And what do we mean by sovereignty? Well, if you're a sovereign on this land called Ireland, you equally own all the resources of this land, all the wealth of this land, the wealth of this country, this nation. That's what a sovereign is. And you can do what you want on this land as long as you don't cause harm, loss or injury to another human being. You can't be committing a crime then. That's what being a sovereign is. But of course, we're so tied up now in legal constructs that you can't wake up in the morning without committing a crime. You know, you flush the toilet the wrong way and it's an offence. You know, you go through a toll bridge, it's an offence if you don't pay. If you don't have a TV licence, it's an offence. Everything is an offence these days. Why? Because we're living under this construct known as the Crown. And it's there to enslave you. You know, this is exactly what's been done. Everybody's a slave, and most people don't realise they're slaves. How could you? You know, we live in a prison without bars. Most people don't know those bars are there because they're not looking for the bars. They think they have it good because they have a job that they can go to for 8 hours a day. And they think that if they pay the taxes and they're in this job 8 hours a day, that they've got it good. How have they got it good? They're in a dictatorship where they've got to work for 8 hours a day, stifling their creativity, doing what they're told, for a fixed wage every week, which won't pay a bloody mortgage. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, there was a guy I was hoping to get on tonight. Now, unfortunately, he never did get back to me. I can't remember his name now. I'll get his name up now in a minute. I'm going to find him now because I'm going to go to a song now in a couple of moments and I'll go and find this guy. But he put a video up on Facebook, I think it was, and the video literally went viral. Absolutely went viral. It went ballistic. But I'm going to play the video now after I come back from playing a song. I'm trying to find my folder here. Here we go. And I was hoping to get the guy on, but unfortunately, as I said, he was in big demand with people trying to get him onto their shows. He's been on a few shows, I think. Now, this is a young chap from Sligo who's a builder over in the UK. But as I said, he put this video blog up where he was just saying a few words about the Apple 13 billion, but he hit home with a lot of people, and I think that's why his video went viral, because he struck a chord with an awful lot of people. And I wanted to get him on, but unfortunately, he's obviously too busy to get back to me. But I might get him on in the future. But I'm going to play his clip when I come back anyway. But first of all, I'm going to play a song. I'm going to play Fateless, We Come On, and I'll set a couple of things up here. I'll be back to you now in a couple of minutes. Talk to you very shortly.
Broadcasting to Lucan, this is Liffey Sound, 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. I hope you like that song there from Fateless. Great tune. Great tune back in the 90s, I remember it well. I'm not going to move on from the IRB because I'm not finished talking about that. As I said, I was down in Thurles yesterday. Had a great day down there in Hayes Hotel, the birthplace of the GAA. It was actually quite nice to finally see the place, you know. It was in the news there a couple of years ago and the government refused to buy the bloody place. I think it was in the hands of Armour at the time. But like I said, the reason all this is going on, it's like Vaughan's Hotel. I mean, Vaughan's Hotel, by right, I mean, the 1916 bloody Rising was commanded from in there. I mean, it all started in there. And it should be a national monument, you know. And if you go to Parnell Square in Dublin today, the place is, it's not lying in ruins, but it could do with a major overhaul. And it should be done. The state should be doing this. But as I said before, we don't have a de jure government in this country. We have a de facto government, a provisional government. You know, they're just caretakers till the de jure elected government get back in. Now, here's the funny thing now, you see, with Brexit, where does that leave Britain in relation to Northern Ireland, because they want to stay as a part of the European Union. We're a part of the European Union, even though I wish we bloody weren't. But we are. I mean, it could make all sorts of problems for them in the future. But I mean, one way to solve the whole lot is to reinstate the 1918 32 county general election mandate. End of. Get rid of the Oireachtas, get rid of the Seanad, get rid of the Northern Ireland Assembly, get rid of the European Union. And who should be really running this country? Run the country. Take all the assets of the state back. Take all the fisheries back, the gold back, the minerals, the oil, the gas, our water, everything from all these corporate greedy scumbags. Kick them all out of the country and run our own affairs. You know, because we've been conditioned in this country for some strange reason to think that we can't. You know, and it's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to play a video. Let me see now. This is from a guy, as I said, he's been doing very well on social media. A guy called James Conway from Sligo. I spoke to him on Facebook the other night. Now, he did say he'd do his level best. He didn't make any promises. He said he'd do his level best to get back to me on today, on Monday. But unfortunately he didn't. As I said, he's doing a lot of radio, so I'd imagine he's probably quite busy. So he obviously didn't get back to me. We're going to play this little clip now. This is James Conway. He's just a builder. He's a Joe Soap. He's like everybody else in this country. He was forced to emigrate because of the economic situation in this country. And now, like, he's back now, obviously. But he was in Ireland for the weekend, I believe. But obviously he's going to go back to the UK. But he's just a Joe Soap. But what he says in his video, there's a couple of swear words in it. I think he says the F word once or twice, and then he doesn't after that. So just bear with me. And if you're offended by a swear word, I apologise in advance. But it is after the watershed, after 9. So listen to this guy. Have a listen to what he says. And I'll be back to you in a couple of minutes. And hopefully I'm going to get this guy on in the future because he's well clued in. And what he says, every politician, and I'm sure a lot of them have seen this video by now because it's been in a few of the papers online, and the Independent and one or two others. So have a listen to this and see what you think.
You're sitting here and I was scrolling through Facebook, and I'm probably late in saying this, but I only seen it now, that Apple owes something in the region of between 12 and 14 billion euros to Ireland. Now, as far as I know, and I ain't very educated in the matter, but a million is 1,000 thousands. So 12 billion, well, that's just an awful amount of money, so it is. So that sounds good, like. But then I read it again and I said, yes, that's great. This is the best part, though. The Irish government doesn't want it. They don't want 12 billion. Because they're afraid Apple will get up and go. Well, here's my point about it now, however much money it is. Fuck Apple. Fuck the lot of them. Take the money. Take the money and start laying cable and redoing roads and doing something to get the likes of myself, all the boys that to live, to get everyone back. Because when people is working, they're spending money in the country. How much is Apple spending? Damn all. People are still going to go out and buy their phones. They're still going to make their profit. They'll stay in Ireland because they already have one of the lowest corporation tax rates in the world. So what? They should pay nothing. Pull the other one. Enda Kenny came out years ago and he says, most people leaves Ireland because they want to. And damn it, he was re-elected. Most people leaves Ireland because they want to. Most people leaves Ireland because they had to. Because there's nothing at home, only jobs that don't pay you enough to fucking keep the house you were buying 10, 12 years ago. Want to have a fucking reality check for themselves. We're not all IT people. We're not all scientists and mathematicians and shitehawks like that. What about the ordinary man? You don't give two damns. And that's what I'm saying to the Irish government. You've forgotten about the likes of myself. All the boys that weren't made to be scientists and all these feckin' things. Education, yeah. When I went to school, it was a disgrace. No teacher wanted to spend no time with you. There was 35 in classes. 35 for 40 minutes. One teacher. How was one teacher meant to go around each child and tell them and explain something to them? The fast ones got ahead and the slow ones fell behind. But now the slow ones is forgotten about and they have to fuck off out of the country and find something else for themselves. And then when you get 12 billion that you could create a bit of work for them, you won't fucking take it. You're a shower of absolute rampant bastards. And that's the truth.
Now, folks, says it all really if you ask me. I mean, it was quite an impassioned video the guy made. I mean, I take my hat off to him. He says what everybody else in this country is bloody thinking. You know, why won't the government take that 12 billion? Well, here's the theory as to why they can't take it. The reason they won't take it, and a good friend of mine, Paddy, told me this yesterday on the way down to Thurles. We were chatting about it in the car. And he says that the reason they won't take it is because, and he's right, is because of the backroom criminal deals done with Apple in relation to this corporation tax. That's why they can't give it back to them. Because it's going to expose too many corrupt politicians in this country at the very top of the power structure who allowed this to happen. Now, if it's Apple that owes 13 billion, with a B, billion, could solve the housing crisis tomorrow. As that chap there said, James Comey, you could start building roads, laying cables, give them work to Irish people. Now, how many other corporations are in this country who also got those breaks? I mean, Apple is not a very old company. I mean, don't get me wrong, Apple's been around since the 70s, the mid to late 70s. But as a global corporation that they are today, that all came about because of the Macintosh, when they built that back in the 80s. That's when they started to become a serious global player. But how many other big global players are in this country? You've got the likes of Intel, Dell. I mean, I could keep going on all night naming big corporations that operate and provide and do provide jobs in this country. But at what cost? What's the tax breaks that they're getting? You know, you've got Michael O'Leary coming out saying that the European Union are just picking on Apple. They should leave them alone. But sure, he's another big corporation, Ryanair. You know, what tax breaks do they get to operate from this country? You know, fair is fair. If you're expecting the common working man to bust his gut for 40 hours a week, to pay for a house that he can't afford, because he's paying so much tax, universal social charge, VAT on everything he buys, all this crap, and yet corporations can come into this country, pay, in Apple's case, €50 on the million. So basically pay zero tax. And yet have the neck down to charge consumers in this country exorbitant amounts of money for technology that they have created in China using slave labour for buttons. I mean, you're charged probably €500 or €600 in this country for an iPad. How much did it cost them to produce that? You know, we all know there's components in mobile phones and iPads that come from certain places in Africa, and there is nowhere else in the world that you can get these minerals. And they're like blood diamonds. You know, people have to die to get their hands on this stuff. And yet we're all sitting here in the West, all using our electronic devices, etc., not knowing this. You know, but all these corporations, you know, they're raping the planet to get the resources to create these products that they come into these countries, pay no taxes, and charge us through the nose for. And yet the government doesn't want the 13 billion. Well, the reason they can't take the 13 billion, as was explained to me yesterday, was because that deal was most probably reached criminally. There's nothing legitimate about the deal. Now, I don't know what the European Union's game is, because when they're as corrupt as anything anyway. But I don't know why they're insisting that the Irish take that 13 billion off Apple. Maybe it's because some ministers in the European Union didn't get big brown envelopes like some of them here might have got. to create them deals. You know, it's crazy. I mean, the country's in a mess. As that chap James Conway says, there's 13 billion sitting there that this government won't take. And then Michael Noonan came out the other day and said it's going to take 4 to 6 years to complete the appeal process. So it's a joke. This is an absolute joke. You know, this brings me back to what I was talking about with the IRB. You know, this government that's doing all this allegedly on behalf of the people of this country are the de facto government. They're a provisional government. You know, they're not there by the will of the people of the 32 counties. They're there by the will, not even by the will of the people of the 26 counties. They were put in place in 1922 by King George V under threat of great and immediate war. That was the threat that was given to Michael Collins. If you don't sign this deal, we're going to kill everybody in your country. End of. And I mean, we know the British Empire's record for wiping out populations around the world. You know, look at the American Indians, what happened to them. It wasn't just the English, it was the Portuguese Empire, there was other empires as well. But all these colonial empires, they went to America. I mean, we talk about holocausts. We talk about the Jewish Holocaust in 1944 or 1939 to 1945 in the Second World War. Now, whether you believe that happened or not is irrelevant. They say it happened, so just use that as an example. 6 million. What about the American Indians? A couple of 100 million. What about the Irish in 1845 to 1850? Do you know how many million died then? 5 to 6 million. From starvation. There was no potatoes. There must have been no broccoli, no meat, no fish, no wheat, no apples grown on trees. But no, we were told in school it was a potato famine and everyone starved to death. But what about all the other food? Now when you look at this and say, well, why didn't Irish people eat other food? Well, because they didn't own the land that the food was grown on, and any food that was being grown in this country has been taken out of this country at gunpoint by the British Army. And there's a guy called James Fogarty who's written a brilliant book, or Chris Fogarty, sorry, Irish-American, who's written a brilliant book called The Perfect Holocaust. And who made it the perfect Holocaust? Who's been covering up this Holocaust since the 1850s? You know, and progressive governments right up to today have been covering this up. I mean, we're taught in school that we had a famine in this country. There was no famine. There wasn't a famine. Ireland's not a desert. We can grow food in this country. It's probably one of the most fertile lands on the planet. As I said, there was no famine in this country. It was a Holocaust. It was a genocide. Call it what it is. At least tell the truth. But they won't, you see, because they need to keep the status quo going. Those in power need to keep the status quo going. Because they're not here, as I said, for the will of the Irish people. I mean, even go on to Billy McGuire's website, billymcguire.com. There's enough on there to tell you and to educate you. If you're open-minded enough to go and have a look and just forget everything you've been taught about Irish history and go and have a look at the real history of this country, what really happened. You know, there's been people out there trying to get this information out for a long, long time and it's being suppressed, but thankfully now it's coming out. Now, as I said, I was at the AGM yesterday of the IRB. I was invited down and I went down. I actually got elected onto a helping group to help with PR in the run-up to 1919, because one thing they do need to do is to try and stop this de facto government in this country from hijacking 1919, which will be the 100-year anniversary of the first Dáil. Now, I don't think the Irish government are going to do anything about that, and they would like to see whatever the IRB do to be very low key. But I'm hoping that between now and 2019, enough people wake up to what's really going on in this country and get out and support the real constitution of this country, which is the 1918 Constitution. Incidentally, I was only reading it this morning. I mean, it's an amazing document. If you read it, what your rights and privileges are as an Irish citizen, it's quite a good book. But or a constitution, should I say? And I recommend you go on to billymcguire.com. You'll definitely get a copy of it on there, and you can have a look. And it's very worth looking at. But under the IRB, under that 1918 Constitution, this is why it's so important. You know, you look at this country today, it's been sold down the river. You know, this is a corporate playground, this country. You know, and that's not to even mention the vulture funds that are now operating in this country. It's ridiculous. But it's a corporate playground. You know, corporations come in here and they've just been raping this country left, right and centre for the last 100 years plus. But it needs to stop. It really does need to stop. The thing about the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the sovereignty they hold in trust for the Irish people is just that. They hold it in trust. They're not there to try and rule over anybody. That's not their goal. The goal is They turned this country into a 32-county sovereign independent republic, which was what it was declared in 1918. And of course then, as I said, we've had the Oireachtas after the Civil War foisted upon this nation. An unlawful assembly, if you ask me, because it was foisted upon us by the English. King George V, if you don't accept this offer, this is what we're going to do. So Michael Collins had no choice but to sign it. You know, and we're told that these people were heroes. You know, I don't know whether you want to call them heroes or not, but I have signed it now. I'd have told them, bring it on. You know, if you want to kill us all, kill us all. But we're not going to... I'd rather be dead, seriously. I'd rather die standing on my feet than spend the rest of my life on my knees. That would be my attitude. End of. And don't get me wrong, I can't speak for the people that were around at that time. We weren't around at that time. We don't know what it was really like. But we live in a different world today. You know, all we need to do is educate people and wake them up. I mean, if you think about it back then, it was a lot easier for them to threaten the nation back then because most people were illiterate. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they weren't being educated, so they didn't know. But it's not the same today. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people in this country have been dumbed down big time. You know, I see walking zombies everywhere, and it's a horrible expression to even use about people because I think everybody has the ability to be an absolutely wonderful human being. We've all got that within us. Everybody has. But I see people walking around and, you know, they've got crap lives and they think this is the law. You know, nothing could be further from the truth. But unfortunately, that's the way our masters, our rulers want it. They want it like that because it suits their agendas. To have everybody stupefied, thinking that the world is the way it's been presented to them. That's not the way the world is, folks. The world is a much different place than what has been presented through the mainstream media, through magazines, books, etc., etc. It's a very, very different place. And it's controlled by very different people than what you've been led to believe it's controlled by. Anyway, I've got to go to some ads, so I'm going to do that now because it's getting on for the next set of ads. So I'll just delete this, give me a second. And when I come back then, I want to talk about a couple of other things that I hope to be covering in upcoming shows. So give me 2 minutes and I'll be back to you all very shortly.
Local programs, local presenters, local news. Tune to Liffey Sound 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. It is now 2:15, so I've got about 10 minutes left, right? Because I'm going to have to play out the song as usual. The text number is 08706271138 if you want to text in with any comments or anything about what you're listening to. Before I move on, I just want to finish up about what happened yesterday down at the Hayes Hotel in Thurles. As I said, it was the 158th annual AGM of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, who haven't disappeared from the history books, but they most certainly have been airbrushed from the history books. And fair play to Billy McGuire, he's been keeping this alive most of his life, as has his family before him. I mean, the Sam Maguire Cup, for God's sake, is named after I think it's his granduncle, or his uncle, I'm not sure, but it's a relative of his. This is how important all of this actually is, you know. And as I said, the powers that be in this country don't want any information about Billy getting out. Now, for the previous couple of years up to this year, he wasn't allowed into the Mansion House on Ireland's Independence Day because you would have had what I would term establishment Lord Mayors, like a Fine Gael Lord Mayor, Fianna Fáil Lord Mayor, whatever, or Labour. But last year we had the lovely Crean in Dáil from Sinn Féin. And Crean is she's a diamond of a woman, she's a gem. Great Lord Mayoress as well. Done an absolutely fabulous tenure in the Mansion House. But she was kind enough to have Billy in for the Ireland's Independence Day celebrations. But only 20 people were allowed in, and I was on the guest list and I was allowed in. And I was quite proud of that moment to witness Billy doing the turning of the Sovereign Seal ceremony in the Mansion House, in the Cabinet Room. Crean was there as well, Crean in Dáil, the Lord Mayoress at the time, and she read out the proclamation. And it was all very sombre and it was very nice. It was nice to see the Lord Mayor properly recognise Billy and the IRB and their role in the history books. But of course they've been airbrushed out of the history books. So hopefully for the next couple of years we can, I suppose, up the ante and up the campaign to make everybody in this country aware of what actually happened and what transpired between 1918 and 1922 and the unlawful de facto provisional government that has been foisted upon us ever since, who are not acting in the best interest of this country. They're acting in the best interest of the paymasters, the Crown. End of. And I defy anybody to come on here and prove me wrong, that what I'm saying is not true. Okay? If there's anybody out there that wants to come on and debunk what I'm saying, I'd be delighted to talk to you. And I'd be delighted to be proven wrong. But I don't think I ever will be. Moving on. as I explained at the top of the show, I'm hoping from maybe next week to have a past guest on, a guy I had on a couple of weeks ago called Trevor Ivers, who is responsible for a great Facebook page called Awaken Aware in South East Ireland on Facebook. And I would go and join it. He's got a good few members on there, and he's great at getting information out. And I had him on a couple of weeks ago. The reason I had him on was because he reminded me of myself a good few years ago. Someone who's just waking up, having this conscious awakening of what's going on in the world, and trying to put it to rights, trying to let people know, like, look, do you know that this is going on? And unfortunately, the poor chap, he puts great posts up. I love following his posts because he bangs his head against these brick walls now and again with people, and I come up against it all the time. You can either choose to let it bother you or just plant the seed and move on, and that's what I always do. I plant the seed and move on, because that's all you can do. But yesterday I was actually talking about how to introduce information to people without them, putting up this red flag in front of them and saying, get away from me, you lunatic, you're crazy. Where's your tinfoil hat? What you need to do is, and I was talking to a good friend of mine that I travelled to Thurles with yesterday, Darren Harris, and Darren was saying the best way to get the info into people is to imagine them as a skeleton with no meat on it. And your role then is to put meat on the skeleton. And basically how you'd start it out is, your first question to them should be, listen, I want to have a chat with you about something, but I need you to have an open mind. Do you have an open mind? And he's saying most people will say yes. And once you get them then, that sort of puts them at ease. And then you can slowly then say, listen, if this particular thing happened and this was the benefit from it, would you find it unusual that it went down that way? And for example, 9/11, who benefited? Follow the money. There's some great documentaries online in relation to 9/11. But if you follow the money surrounding 9/11, you can see who benefited. And that's how you need to introduce information to people. There's no point in going up and... I find a great past guest of mine, Terry Lawton, he's great at exposing chemtrails and the geoengineering agenda. And he's good at it. What he does is he goes up and explains about geoengineering to people rather than saying, look what they're spraying in the sky, they're trying to kill us all. That frightens people off. He will introduce them to weather modification. That this is a concept that's been going on for a long, long time. And you can slowly slip in all the other stuff then. But you need to get someone relaxed if you're going to try and give them this information, because the thing about revealing this kind of information to people is most people who don't know about it will immediately suffer from something called cognitive dissonance. And it's not through their own fault. It's through conditioning, it's through education, it's how we're brought up. And that's how your mind works. If something goes against your comfort zone, you're going to fight to stay in that comfort zone. Everyone does. I'll give you an example that I was given years ago in relation to comfort zones. There was this 12-year-old kid who lived what can only be described as one of the most abusive childhoods possible. He was abused in all sorts of ways, physically, mentally, everything else. By a drunk dad, whatever. And he was adopted or fostered then into a different environment to this guy called Lou Tice, as it happens. He runs an organisation in America called the Pacific Institute for Personal Development. And he was telling this story that he had this 12-year-old boy who was in this abusive environment growing up. And he was taken out of that environment then when it was discovered the way he was living, etc. And he was fostered into Lou's home. And he was shown nothing but love and affection, etc., etc., and given the best of everything. But what he did was, because that child was out of his comfort zone, he done things then to Lou Tice to try and get Lou Tice to punish him. It ended up in burning Lou Tice's house down. And the boy went to prison because it was a criminal offence what he'd done. But he'd gone to prison for it. Now he's still in touch with Lou Tice. He still fosters him. I mean, he's probably a grown man now at this stage. But he was explaining that because he was taken out of his comfort zone, he will do anything to get back in there. And he will do these things without realising what he's doing is bad or whatever. And that's how people are. If you present information to somebody about 9/11, about 7/7, about the New World Order, about anything that's going on in the world, and it interferes with their version of reality, they will oppose what you're saying to them. That's the cognitive dissonance kicking in. So the best way to approach people, I find, is, and like Darren explained this to me yesterday in the car quite eloquently, is to view them as a skeleton and you're going to put meat on the bones. But you've got to do it bit by bit. There's no point in jumping in and saying this, that and the other, because you just frighten people off. And it's crazy. Especially if you're going to talk about a far out subject, like UFOs or whatever. You know, and that's something I'm going to be talking about in the near future on my shows. And some other far out subjects. I'm going to start trying to get guests on to talk about some far out stuff. And hopefully I'm going to rope Trevor into that. So if he's listening, that's what we're going to be working on. But as I said, if you want to get this kind of information to people, you have to do it very slowly. You can't just assume. It's not like going up to someone and saying, "Oh, listen, have you heard about Brad and Angelina?" Because they'll respond to that straight away. Most people do. But if you go to someone and say, "Listen, have you ever heard about 9/11?" Boom, they'll jump back and say, "Hey, hang on a minute, you're interfering with my version of reality. My cognitive dissonance is going to kick in now and we're going to have an argument." And I've been down that road. I've had arguments with people who are lifelong friends. I started telling them years ago about this, that and the other, and they just look at you like you've got two heads. Get away from me, you monster. You're crazy. There's something wrong with you. And in the early stages, you do get offended by that. You do actually get offended by it, but now it's a compliment, to be honest with you, because you can sort of, I'm not saying smugly look at someone and say, "Well, I know this and I know that," but you don't, because you're asleep. It's never like that. But, if someone does call you a nut job, you can just quietly say to yourself, "Well, yeah, that's how you perceive me and I understand that. But I'm not. If you knew what I knew, trust me, you'd be going bloody nuts yourself. But not with a mental deficiency. You'd be going nuts with anger. You want to do something about it. Because that's what it does to you. It wakes you up. And, like Trevor's a perfect example of that. He was explaining on the show how, lifelong friends of his will... It's not that they turn their back on you or you turn your back on them. It's you're not vibrating on the same frequency of them. That's the problem. And that's the problem for most people who wake up and become knowledgeable of all this information. You no longer vibrate on the same frequency of those who are not in receipt of this kind of information or don't look at this kind of stuff. And if you don't vibrate with them, well, they're going to oppose you every step of the way. And you're wasting your time trying to convince them that there's this possible danger coming down the line that everybody should be aware of. Because you feel once you become aware of all of this stuff that's what you want to do. But as I said, you lose many friends along the way doing that. So the trick is, see them as a skeleton and put a little bit of meat on the bone. Plant a seed. Just one little thing and leave it with them. But always start out the conversation with, "Listen, I want to have a chat with you about something that's a little out there, a little far out, but you need an open mind." And once you tell most people that you need an open mind, they'll respond, "Oh yeah, I'm very open-minded, I think the universe is a weird and wonderful place. So hit me with it." And then when you hit them with something as, crazy as 9/11, that the mainstream media story wasn't true and that something more nefarious was going on behind the scenes. When you start imparting that kind of information to people, once you've told them they need an open mind, they'll usually be more susceptible to not accepting the information, but bringing it on board and analysing it for themselves. Using critical thinking. Because that's what you need. You need people to be able to critically think about the information that you're giving to them. Because if it's something that interferes with their version of reality, it'll scare the shit out of them. That's the problem. You don't want to be people don't want to be hearing stuff like that. So, for anyone that's out there that's sort of doing this kind of thing, that's what you need to do. Anyway, I have come up to the end of the show. It is 4 minutes down. I'm going to play out with a great song, Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall. Because that's all we are, folks. We're just bricks in the wall. Another brick in the wall. Anyway, so hopefully from next week, I'm going to have Trevor on. I'm going to touch base with Trevor in the next couple of days, and we're going to discuss what we can talk about next week, and he can go away and do his little bit of research. I'll go away and do my little bit of research, and we'll try and get a show out of it, just to see what way it goes. So until next week, folks, remember, the world is full of great people, and if you can't find one, be one. So until next week, take care, and I'll talk to you all very soon.
Nine to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. The world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds.